December 14th brought 2 games to the Famicom that claimed to be the first RPG on the system. Neither of them really fit into RPG as a genre, but I'm going to start with the one that if you squint just right at it, you could see it. Bokosuka Wars is one of those games that started out on the PC-88, and then got ported to the Famicom by a publisher looking to get anything out. The Famicom game got a bit of a reputation as being an awful title, but it's gotten a reevaluation since then. There's a pretty subtle game system underlying it. There are a ton of rough edges to the game, though. The story is that the Kingdom of Slem is being attacked by the Bossam Empire. The King of Slem headed out to attack their fortress, but his army was captured, and many of his troops were turned to stone or trees. So now the king is by himself, 600 meters away from King Ogolas of the Bossam Empire. You have to march your way left, saving your troops, fighting your way through the Bossam army, and then finally defeat King Ogolas in single combat. So you're by yourself when you start, and you begin moving around with this chunky scrolling that sometimes fails to move you. The first thing you want to do is ram into any of the objects that are littered along the path. Rocks, trees, walls, any of them could be one of your transformed men. There's a counter in the upper left that indicates how many of your men are still alive. Okay, so you found someone. You move in a clustered group. Pressing A or B will change who you're giving orders to, so you can move around one type of troop at a time, or everyone at once. Troops don't always move when you order them to, so that can break apart your formations. You initiate combat by running a unit into an enemy. This bee will appear and you can hear their struggle for a few moments. You can move while they're fighting as well. Before I go on, you have to understand how combat works. Everyone has a combat score. The King's starts at 220, and when you bump into an enemy, those combat scores are combined, and a random number determines the outcome. Let's use a quick example. Here is our starting king with his power of 220. He runs into an enemy knight with the power 50. So we add those together to get 270, and then a random number up to 270 is chosen. If the result is up to the king's strength, then he wins, the enemy is defeated, and he gets plus 10 strength. If the enemy wins, then your unit is defeated, and if it's the king, then it's an automatic game over. So mathematically, any enemy can defeat you instantly. All it takes is one lucky roll. To maximize your chances, you'll want to level up your troops as far as they can go. The king's strength maxes out at 320. There are 2 units you can find on your march: soldiers and knights. Soldiers start with a strength of 30, and defeating 3 enemies levels them up to a heavy soldier. Leveling up gives them plus 80 strength, so 140 when they transform, and their maximum strength is 310. Soldiers are more common, and you'll find large groups of them imprisoned. The secret advantage of the soldier is that he's the unit that can defeat King Ogolas's personal guard, so you have to keep a soldier with you until the very end. The knights start out with a combat strength of 150, and just like with the soldier, defeating 3 enemies levels them up to a heavy knight. The heavy knight has 260 power when it transforms, and their maximum strength is also 310. There are fewer knights, but they're going to be the ones that you're relying on as the workhorses of your army. They can also smash through the iron bars that hold soldiers prisoner. Something important to note is that the strength of your units appears at the bottom right. The king's strength is always displayed, and the previous combat is displayed. Use that to keep track of how well you're doing. Now let's talk about the Bossam forces. The first ones you'll encounter are knights. They have 50 strength. Once you're past that initial wave, you'll bump into some soldiers. They have 10 strength. You'll reach a few points where there are large masses of soldiers. That is your opportunity to power up your own soldiers as much as possible. These squid-like guys are jailers. They have 30 strength, and you'll have to fight your way past them to free your men. This fellow in between the blocks is the sorcerer. Moving the king past him has him turn all those blocks into phantom warriors. Phantom warriors have 50 strength and come back to life when they're defeated. So if you bump one of your troops into them, the enemy could keep respawning on top of them until your troop dies. Kill the sorcerer to kill all the phantom troops. As you approach the enemy fortress, you'll start encountering heavy knights. These guys chase the king down and have 100 attack power. The castle guards have the highest attack power of any enemy, at 250. However, if they're fighting one of your soldiers, their attack power is 10. So you might be able to break through the guards without a soldier, but it's pretty iffy. King Ogolas has 100 power, and he can only be defeated by your king. If you get to the very end, it still comes down to a 1 in 4 chance that you'll just lose at that moment. One more gameplay element that you should be aware of. Every 100 meters you'll run into this barrier. The king is the only one who can break through it. The best way to play Bokosuka Wars mechanically is to first try to level up your king to max. If you get a game over in the first couple minutes, that's the easiest time to reset. The second strategy is to use the masses of enemy soldiers to level up your own soldiers. Run those guys through a crowd of them, and accept that you're going to get some huge losses. Ideally, you want to build up at least 2 soldiers and 2 knights to the 310 mark. And then you can use everyone else's cannon fodder to kind of clear your way. If you get lucky and they power up, good for you. So you can see that Bokosuka Wars is at its heart a press your luck game. Any given encounter can ruin your game, so you have to play to maximize your odds. But even once you do that, you're going to have a hard time just statistically. Even powered up all the way, you'll still have to go through many fights where the odds are 1 in 4 that you're going to lose. The music in Bokosuka Wars is pretty repetitive, but just like in ASCII's previous game, there are lyrics that tell you how to play. One more problem with Bokosuka Wars is just how slow it is. Everything goes slow, and the way that it sometimes drops inputs makes it feel even slower. I'm pretty sure the dropped inputs are a way to break up formations rather than an actual bug, but it doesn't feel good. A game of Bokosuka Wars takes about 45 minutes to play once you get going, and that's a pretty heavy time investment when one bad roll can send you back to the beginning. It's an interesting game. I think it's worth trying, just because its structure is so different from anything else. But once you successfully complete it, I don't think there's much of a reason to go back to the game.